All right, Reagan. Well, welcome to the Cross Training Ministries podcast. Thank you for joining me today.
It's great to be with you.
So, here at Cross Training, we try to help men build a lifestyle of putting Christ first. And as part of that, we often are helping guys kind of assess where they are in their life right now. And here's who you are currently, and here's who you want to be, and what's kind of in between the two, and what's getting in the way of you becoming the man of God that you want to be, and developing that character and stuff. And over the past couple of years of helping guys do this, I've been both shocked and discouraged by the fact that one of the things that gets in the way of men becoming the man they want to be is an addiction to video games or just their gaming habits in general. And it's a little discouraging for me because honestly, I don't have a lot of experience with that. I'm not a huge gamer myself. And so I've found that I don't have good advice to give these guys. I don't even have a good way to talk to these men because generally I just kind of go with well, just throw it all away, right? Just throw all the video games away. Maybe.
Yeah.
And that's honestly, it's a little shallow. But I found that you wrote a book on gaming, and it's a guide for Christians to gaming and how to handle that and think deeply about this idea of video games and Christians. And I really enjoyed it. So I thought, okay, I need to talk to this guy, Reagan, and figure out what he would say to some of these guys that are struggling with this. So I want to kind of start there. I want you to respond to what I think is most often told to Christian men who do play video games. And that's this: real men don't play video games. I hear that a lot. And I think that advice is a little shallow. So what do you think? Can Christians be growing and play video games?
Yeah. So I remember hearing that a lot, even when I came up through college during the time when Mark Driscoll, the infamous Mark Driscoll, was becoming really popular, and he was known for that. And I remember bristling at hearing that as someone who was I considered myself a gamer, and thinking, well, that's ridiculous. Now I have to balance my answer a little bit because you can see where people are coming from when they say that.
Yeah.
And it happens a lot, especially in our circles that are talking about Christian masculinity. And the Bible does say act like men, putting childish things behind you, that kind of thing. And so on the surface, it does kind of look like, okay, you're playing games, right? So that sounds like something kids do. And so I can understand where it comes from. But I think it's not really fair because if you look at video games and try to put them alongside other forms of entertainment, we don't do the same thing when it comes to watching football or someone who watches a lot of movies or even someone who reads a lot of fiction books, right? There's different forms of entertainment. And I think you could, if you really wanted to, straw man each of them, you could call all of them childish. You could say football, that's just a game. Why are you watching that? Why are you sitting there on Sunday watching it? So I don't think it's fair. I do think that you can be a Christian, you can be maturing, you can be growing while also playing games as a preferred form of entertainment. I definitely don't see those things as being in conflict with each other. I think games present their own unique challenges as a form of entertainment, but on the whole, I agree with you. I don't think that that's a fair characterization.
Yeah. So sell me kind of on the idea of games. Let's make a good case for video games, because I think there's a piece of our audience who are maybe they're in their 30s or their 40s. And if you don't already have a gaming habit, you're not going to pick it up today. Like you're not going to just go out and spend $600 on, a gaming system and games. So you're not even interested and you don't even get it. But sell me on the idea. Why is gaming so attractive? What makes video games so good?
Yeah, I think the main thing is the participatory nature of it. Like it is not passive. Whether you're reading or watching something, those are passive activities. Video games are one of the few mediums where you can actually involve yourself. And what's really cool about them, and I think what makes it so fun, is you can involve yourself and essentially have you can do things you could never do. You can race cars, you can have superpowers, you can do amazing things. And so that's why they're so entertaining. And I think there are positives to that. There's problem solving. There's with internet connected games, you have the social aspect of that. I think there definitely are a number of positives that are unique to video games as a genre of entertainment that you don't get in other forms that do make them superior in some way. So I definitely think there are good sides to it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there is an attraction to it for sure, and I think if you've never played games before, I think that participatory nature of it, like you said, yeah, that makes it fun and exciting. However, okay, then it bleeds into, but then you can start spending all your time doing all these
Yeah.
things, being active in it. So some of this comes down to a lot of what you talk about on redeeming productivity, which is your podcast. I'd suggest to guys is time management, just some general principles of how to live. So how would you help guys with the time management aspect of this with video games?
Yeah, I think that is probably one of the biggest dangers to games. I mean, a lot of times people focus on the content, they focus on the other things, which are serious, but because video games are so engrossing, you can lose track of time. I mean, I know I do. You could play late into the night and be like, "Oh, wait, what just happened? Where am I? What day is it?"
Yeah.
Um, so I think that is a major thing is time management. And that's probably one of the biggest controls you can kind of put on yourself to guardrails is a better word for it, to
Yeah.
protect yourself from overindulging in video games. And I think it's a simple fact of saying, I'm going to play for this much. That's not legalism. It's not, you're not saying everyone's only allowed to play video games for 1 hour a day. That's in the 10 Commandments. No, it's not. It's a rule you put on yourself to guard yourself against certain proclivities that you know would lead to you wasting time. And
Right.
so putting rules in place for how long you'll spend, I think that's the biggest thing you can do.
Yeah, that's right. So, what are some other dangers that guys face who are into gaming? What are some of the things that guys need to watch out for if they're kind of addicted gamer in a gaming lifestyle?
Yeah, I definitely think that the addictive part is the big one. So let me
Yeah.
just double click on that a little bit
Yeah.
more. Um, what a lot of people don't understand, especially if maybe you grew up playing video games and then you stopped. Like if you picture, I think we're probably around the same age. The games
Yeah.
when we were kids, like they weren't connected to the internet. You bought
Right.
the game and then you played it and then you were done with it. Like it was not to think of someone being addicted to like Super Mario Brothers is like, okay, like something else is wrong there. Like it was hard to be addicted to them. But when you look at video games as like the industry as a business, their business model has changed. And I
Mm,
think it's discerning for us to consider that it is in the best interest of the video game developers to make them as addicting as possible. I'm not casting aspersions on their motives, but if
right.
you just look at what incentivizes them, it's not about selling a $70 game anymore. I mean, they still do that, but the money they make is mostly on memberships,
Mm,
what they call microtransactions, buying skins, buying a season pass on like Fortnite or something, right? All of these little things, that's where the real money is made.
sure.
And so when you think about that, if you're a developer, I need more and more of people's attention so that they keep playing my game as much as possible, so they keep participating in these microtransactions. And
Mm,
so because of that, they've gotten way better than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And I make the case in the book. I said video games aren't bad. They're too good. They're
oh,
too good. Like they have hacked human psychology to such a degree that it is very difficult to play in moderation.
mm,
And that's speaking for myself, that I don't play games anymore, except for maybe if I'm at a friend's house and they want to play a
mm,
game and we're together. But that is why is I could not stop. Like
mm,
I tried all these different ways of doing it in moderation, and eventually I landed on, I think it's wiser for me to just not do it. And so to me, that's kind of my hobby horse. Risk factor to it is the addiction thing, because
mm,
that's what I've struggled with. And I
mm,
think with Christians, when you approach anything that has the potential for addiction, we think with Paul, all things are lawful to me, but not all things are beneficial, and I will not be mastered by anything. I don't want to. I don't want to pick up cigarettes because I know nicotine's addicting.
mm,
I don't want to be too laissez-faire when I approach video games, because I have to recognize that they're made to be addicting. It's the same thing with gambling. They actually followed some of the same there's some stuff I think I cited in the book, some studies about the video game manufacturers studied gambling, casino games, to try to figure out how to make them more addicting. So
wow.
again, all of that's to say that, not to say that video games are bad, but there's a risk factor there. And so I think that's the biggest one. Other downsides, of course, are of course the content, which I think a lot of people are aware of. I mean, there's a lot of pretty nasty games out there.
Yeah.
Another one that probably is not emphasized as much as it should, and this more applies to kids, I would say, is just the social aspect of it. That there's a
Uh,
whole online world, there's a whole culture that surrounds gaming, and there's really good pockets of it, but there's a lot of bad out there, and
mm,
there's a lot of content beyond the game itself when you're plugged into the internet that
yeah.
we need to be aware of.
Huh. Huh. That's good. That's helpful. Uh, and I think what you're saying in the beginning there about this addiction piece being more dangerous than most guys give credit to, and that
Hmm.
like any addiction, it comes on slowly at first, and then all of a sudden, wait, I'm spending my whole life doing this. And yeah, I think that, like you said, each guy's going to kind of have to analyze where they're at and how to handle that. For you, that meant, okay, let me stop. But I think you gave some great advice in your book for just helping guys develop a game plan for handling gaming in their life. And I love one of the things you said. You said that you need to decide in advance. That's the key. Decide in advance what games to play and when to play them. So I don't know, maybe double down on that and maybe talk directly to a guy who is kind of spending too much time on gaming, but wants to get his life under control so that he can have a lifestyle putting Christ first. Give him kind of a step by step on what to do next.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think those two factors are really important. Picking what games you'll play.
Uh-huh.
Don't just, go into nowadays you don't have to go to the store. You can, if on the computer, you can go to the Steam store, or, on a lot of consoles, you can download a game from there. And so by the way, a lot of this applies also to how we think about Netflix or something like that, is
That's true.
being being considered in what you're going to allow into your mind. And I think that there could be a case to be made that you should be more considered about what you're going to participate in,
Uh,
right?
yes.
So the types of games you choose to play, that has to be very well thought out. And so I think there's wisdom in considering the content, considering what you're actually going to participate in, right? Like, go back to violence in video games. There used to be stuff like in the 80s and 90s. I remember being a kid, people talking about, yeah, do video games make you violent or not? And all the different
Yeah.
questions around that. I think the bigger question for the Christian is, there are certain games that celebrate and glorify the destruction of the image of God,
Uh,
meaning the destruction of image bearers, of you're pretending to murder people. So I'm not even talking about war games. I'm thinking of a game like Grand Theft Auto 5 where you can just go on a rampage
mm,
and murder people. And you're like, well, it's not real. It's like the scriptures say that God hates the soul of the one who kills.
mm,
God does not like us to be people who have murder in our hearts. Even Jesus talks about this in the Sermon on the Mount, right? That you hate your
mm.
brother. It's the same as though you've killed him. Um, to go around and pretend that you're killing people,
Yeah.
like just something to consider. So that's choosing what you play and then choosing when you play in advance
Mm,
too. Don't leave it open ended. Don't say, "Oh, I got some time here. I have nothing to do tonight," and then you binge games for 6 hours. One, you're gonna feel terrible at the end of that. You always do. And I say this, anybody's listening to this, if you are a gamer and you've gone on these long binges, you never are like, wow, that was refreshing. You just got to decide, say, I'm going to do this for an hour, I'm going to do this for 2 hours. Or I think a really wise one to have is having a cutoff. A lot of
mm,
guys play at night, if after work or after school, say, yeah, look, I have a bedtime. I'm gonna have a bedtime at 10 p.m., 11, whatever it is, and say, I'm only going to play till then, and then I'm going to turn off and go to bed.
mm.
Because there are knock-on effects if you
Yeah.
if you let games eat into your sleep time. I know guys who've completely reversed their schedules, where they're sleeping during the day, and it's not like they're working third shift. They just are playing games all night. So decide in advance. That is the key.
Yeah, I love that. And I think in addition to that, for guys to think from a Christian aspect, um, don't I have something better in life too? Remembering the
Yes.
other side of this. So not, saying games are terrible. There's nothing wrong. Like you said, it's like football or Netflix, anything else. However, okay, if I only have so much time, isn't there something worth pursuing that is more glorious and more worthwhile than this? And so, yeah, you got to be able to decide what are those things in your life that you want to spend your time on
Absolutely.
and
I
reflecting
I
on.
think, amen. I think that is the key thing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we look at the landscape of life as Christians and we say, okay, here are things that are clearly sin, right? And so we
Mm.
avoid those things. You're like, okay, pornography, let's avoid that, right? But then you come to these things that are not necessarily sinful, like entertainment, right? Or let's talk video games. And if you look at that in a vacuum, you say, well, it's not sinful, and so I can do as much as I want of it. Like, no, no, you've forgotten something. You've forgotten that you already are on a mission. You
Mm.
you you are a follower of Jesus Christ. He is your Lord. You have a singular purpose of glorifying him with your life. And it talks about in Hebrews about us casting off every encumbrance and the sin that clings so closely. So that it's the sin, and it's also anything that encumbers us from running that race. And
Yes.
so when you have that vision of, I have a purpose in this world to glorify God, it allows you to be more critical of things that are not necessarily bad,
Mm.
but that are getting in your way specifically. And
Mm.
so that lens is what led me personally to be like, look, there are better ways to spend my time than playing video games all the time. And so I want to fill my time with those things. And so I want to read more. I want to be in
Mm.
the word more. I want to, especially now I got little kids, I want to be with my family. And so none of those things require me to say video games are bad.
Mm.
They just require me to say, what are the things that are going to help me on my mission to serve God? And what are the things that are going to get in my way? And then to be prudent about trimming some of those things out. Just because I just think the black and white view of it is not helpful. Imagine somebody saying, if I eat too much dessert, I'll get sick. And so I'll never eat dessert again. Well, that doesn't make, that's crazy.
That's
That's
right.
not how we think. If you know that something can be a hindrance to you, then you need to approach it with discernment and moderation. And that's the approach that I recommend to guys who are like, well, I enjoy games. I find them helpful. It's a great way to relax. Okay. Then just approach it discerningly, but have that big picture in mind. I'm here to serve Christ, not just to serve myself.
That's great. Yeah. One of the questions I've found that's helpful for guys as they're trying to assess their lifestyle is just asking them to get to the end of the day and ask their self the question, did I spend more time today playing video games than I did playing with my kids? If
Mm,
if that's true, then you probably, yeah, you've missed some of your priorities in life and where you need.
that's
And
good.
especially if we start talking about, okay, did I spend more energy today on video games or Netflix or whatever than I did on the energy I need to fulfill my mission of God? Like this, that's where we need to be pouring our energy and our time and things like that. So just taking a step back
Yeah,
and assessing where are we at, what are we doing? Um,
absolutely. And I think if I could add one thing to that,
yes.
I think a lot of times I remember myself feeling, you feel threatened when people come to you and say, hey, you might be playing games too much, or maybe you need to moderate this a little bit. And I think that's why I like to focus on the positive case for the positive case against gaming, if you could say that. Um, it is so much more fulfilling. I talk about this in the book, that the reason games are so enjoyable is because they latch on to something in the human heart that God designed for us. That purpose, that clarity of, here's the objective, here's the obstacles, let's overcome them. And you're enjoying that sense of reward, that a sense of overcoming, that challenge to it, but you're enjoying it in a simulation. It's not real. The real thing is what you've been called to, which is to serve Christ, which has its own obstacles, which has its own rewards, which is ultimately more fulfilling in this life and the life to come. And so I like to put that forth to guys that, like, look, you're not, we're not saying to give up something good. We're saying to trade up for something way better, that's way more fulfilling. And you're going to be way more satisfied if you pour yourself into those things which please God, which serve your family, which do good to others, rather just into video games.
Yes and amen. Come on. No, that's exactly what guys need to hear. Yes. All right. Now I want to kind of turn the focus of who we're talking to now, because I think there are some guys out there that maybe they're not a gamer themselves, but they have
Mhm.
kids, and now their kids are into video games. So how do you help dads? Can you coach a dad to help him start thinking about, how does he help his kids develop healthy habits with gaming? How does he talk to his kids about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll caveat this one because my kids are very little, so they're not even
Okay.
playing games yet. My oldest is 4. Um, but I have worked a lot in student ministries and with parents, and that's sort of the book is geared towards students. And
Mhm.
so I've thought about this and talked to a lot of people about this. And so I'll give a couple of thoughts on this that I think are helpful. One is play games with your kid. If your kid is into playing video games, I think the most important thing you can do for yourself and for them is to say, can I play with you?
Yeah.
They are going to love that. Love that. And here's some of the benefits. One, you're spending time together. And that might be the thing that you might think, this, I don't get it, but you'll start to get it if you play with them. And you'll start to understand on a personal level the particular challenges that come from video games that you're not going to get just from observing as an outsider and saying, I don't get what he's into. So play with them. And then I think along with that, helping them to set those boundaries. Obviously, when they're younger, you just make the boundaries, we only play video games once a week, or, you have a half hour a day, all those things. And there are ways on a lot of these gaming systems and devices to actually set those boundaries using parental controls. And so I say, take advantage of that common grace, fight fire with fire. But as they get older, I think one of the big things you can do to help your kids is encourage them to set those boundaries for themselves by giving them that positive vision of what it means to be a Christian, assuming that they've professed Christ, is giving them that vision of, look, these things are more important, and showing them through your own life. Here are the ways that we spend our downtime that are a bit more productive, that are a bit more conducive to serving God. And yes, leisure is fine, rest is good, but we're going to do that in moderation. We're going to be careful about them, and helping to train them to have the responsibility to put those own safeguards on themselves, because eventually, when they're out of the home, you have that slingshot thing. They go off to college or something, and they move out, and they're like, okay, finally out from that tyranny. Part of the discipling your kids is helping them to get into that place where they're the ones making decisions for themselves about what is too much.
That's great. Yeah. One thing I did recently that I hope will help my kids, I think it will, is Reagan, I gave my son a copy of your book. Like you said, it's aimed at students. And so I gave him your book and I said, son, if you will read this, and then there's discussion questions at the end of every chapter, and then come and talk to me about your answers to the discussion questions. If you finish that book, I will give you a $25 gift card to GameStop. And he's devouring it. He loves it. But for me, I knew that, okay, if I can get my son thinking critically about how he's going to handle his video game life, I'm more than eager to buy him a gift card to go buy a video game, because now I know he's thought through how to handle this. What are the guardrails? We've discussed that together, had a conversation about that. So I think that's a great place to start. If you're a dad, you've got to have those conversations with your kids. And this book that Reagan has, it's a short enough read that your kid will read it. He will. And if you need to incentivize him, a little bit by giving him a gift card, hey, I think it works, and it's certainly worthwhile. So I recommend that. All right, a quick lightning round before we close this out. You up for that?
Hit me.
I didn't prep you for this, but let's see what we can do. All right, if you could be any video game character, who would you want to be?
Man, that is a hard one.
I know, there's a lot of good options out there.
I guess Mario. That's a random one, but it's just such a weird world of mushroom guys and going through pipes. He seems like he's having a lot of fun. I'll pick Mario.
He's classic. How can you go wrong with Mario? I think if I had to choose, I'd probably go like Kevin Durant, who's also an actual human being. But I just want to dunk a basketball. I want to know what it's like to dunk a basketball.
That's a good way to get around it. Pick a guy from a sports
game. I can't do it personally, but all right, how about this? The game that you have logged the most hours on.
Oh, man. This is embarrassing. It's probably, let's see, it's probably either between one of the Halo games. I was really into the Halo games in college. Or there's a game, I think it's still around, called RuneScape, which is like one of these massive multiplayer online role-playing games. I played like the old school version of that. Way too much. It's probably that one. Yeah.
I think for myself, it'd either be GoldenEye on the old school Nintendo.
Oh yeah.
I played way too much of that. Or like one of those college football games from like 2003, 2004 when I was in college. So one of those. All right, how about this? A game suggestion for dads that want to play with their kids. You mentioned that. What's one or two games that you would say, here, Dad, try this, play with your kids?
It's hard for me to answer that because I'm a little out of the loop with those kind of games because I'm not playing myself. My kids aren't old enough.
That's true.
I'll give some principled answer maybe instead.
Yeah, yeah.
I think with younger kids, just if they're into gaming, let them get into gaming first. Don't be the one to get them into gaming. But
Good.
if they are, whatever they're playing, I think is good, and then that's going to allow you to kind of pull back a little bit.
Yeah.
One challenge you'll probably find if you're not a gamer is, especially if you have older kids, is you stink at the game. You're just running into the wall. You're getting killed over and over again. They have no idea what's going on.
Yes,
So
yes.
they'll probably be able to recommend something that's more your speed that they'd be willing to play with you.
As a dad with kids that does play video games, and I try to play with them some, you are exactly right. They are way better at choosing the ones that I have a better chance of actually
Yeah.
enjoying a little bit, because I'm terrible at some of them. If I had to give a broad answer, I'd say any of the Mario ones. You brought up Mario. They're,
Yeah.
the Mario Kart, anything like that.
Mhm.
Those are easy enough for dads to pick up on.
It's
And
a humbling experience, right?
it
I mean,
is, it
to have
is
your kids be so much better at you than something like that. I
true.
wonder if that's why a lot of parents avoid even playing with them, because they're like, this just
Oh
isn't,
yeah.
this is
Oh,
not fun. Like, I can beat my kid in basketball, but I can't beat him in Fortnite. I'm not playing this.
it's true. No, you're right. Well, Reagan, where can people connect with you if they want to find out more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, the main thing is redeemingproductivity.com. I write on time management, personal productivity from a Christian worldview. You can find all my stuff, articles, newsletters, videos, all over there.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. And guys, go out and pick up his book, A Student's Guide to Gaming. I think you will enjoy it personally. And if you got kids that are old enough, man, I think they'll enjoy it. But thanks again, Reagan. And guys, y'all join us next time on the Cross Training Ministries podcast.